What if one choice changed everything? In another world, one small decision, one single word, rewrote the history of magic itself. The story begins the same. A boy with a lightning scar walks into Hogwarts for the very first time. The hat rests on his head, searching, thinking, whispering. And instead of calling out Gryffindor, it says something else. Slytherin. From that moment, everything we knew breaks. Harry doesn't sit beside Ron Weasley. He doesn't meet Hermione first. He sits beside Draco Malfoy, the boy he was meant to hate. What if the boy who lived grew up surrounded by ambition, secrecy, and power? What if the hero became the serpent? This is not a retelling. This is a new history. One born from a single whisper in the Great Hall. The story of Harry Potter, the Slytherin. The candles floated above the Great Hall, their flames trembling in the air like tiny stars. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the small boy standing beneath the ancient sorting hat. Harry Potter, the boy who lived. The hat slid down over his ears, its voice whispering inside his mind. Low, curious, alive. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent. Oh yes. And a thirst to prove yourself. Harry swallowed hard. He didn't understand why his heart beat so fast. Not Slytherin, he thought desperately. Not Slytherin. The hat paused. Not Slytherin, it murmured. Are you sure? You could be great, you know. It's all here in your head. And Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness. There's no doubt about that. Harry closed his eyes. He thought of how everyone had already decided who he was supposed to be. Brave, good, the perfect hero. And then, something in him whispered back, I don't want to be what they expect. The hat fell silent. And then, softly, almost with delight, it spoke aloud. Slytherin! The hall froze. The cheering from the Slytherin table came slowly, hesitant at first, then loud, echoing beneath the enchanted ceiling. Draco Malfoy smiled from his seat, the first to clap, his pale hands shining in the candlelight. Ron Weasley's jaw dropped. Hermione's eyes widened. And at the teacher's table, Dumbledore's smile faded just a little, while Snape's dark gaze narrowed with interest. As Harry sat down beside Draco, the hall returned to life. Laughter, whispers, and uneasy glances. But deep inside, something had changed. The story of the boy who lived had just taken another path. And from the shadows, Hogwarts itself seemed to whisper, the serpent has chosen its prey. The dungeons beneath the castle felt like another world. The air was cooler here, heavier still, filled with the scent of stone and secrets. Green lamps glowed dimly along the walls, their light sliding over old portraits that whispered when no one watched. "Welcome to Slytherin," said Draco Malfoy, his voice echoing proudly as he led the new boy deeper into the common room. The room itself was beautiful in its own cold way. Dark leather chairs, emerald curtains swaying like underwater shadows, and windows looking out into the black lake, where pale shapes moved slowly beyond the glass. Students turned as Harry entered. Some smiled, polite, uncertain. Others whispered, "The boy who lived in our house?" Pansy Parkinson tilted her head, her voice sweet and sharp. "Didn't think heroes liked snakes," Draco smirked. "Maybe he's not a hero." Harry didn't answer. He looked around, at the green firelight dancing on stone, at the old silver banners shimmering faintly in the dark. He felt strange, not afraid, not even unwelcome, just aware. Snape appeared soon after, his cloak whispering behind him like smoke. "So," he said quietly, his black eyes studying Harry, "the famous Potter in my house. How unexpected." He paused, then added, "You will find, Mr. Potter, that greatness is not given here. It is earned." As Snape turned away, Harry caught a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Not warmth, not kindness, but something like approval. That night, as the fire burned green in the corner, Harry lay awake, listening to the slow rhythm of water beyond the windows. He thought of the Gryffindor table, the laughter he'd left behind, the faces that now looked at him with confusion. And yet, in this quiet, in this strange place beneath the lake, he felt something new, a calm curiosity, a hunger to understand the power that everyone feared. The castle above slept. The boy below did not. Somewhere in the darkness, a whisper curled through the air like smoke. "Welcome home, Harry Potter." In Slytherin, lessons were not only taught in books, they were whispered in corridors, exchanged in glances, hidden behind smiles that never reached the eyes. Harry learned quickly. Here, knowledge was not a gift. It was a weapon. Snape's classes became something different for him now. The professor no longer treated him as the arrogant son of James Potter. Instead, Snape began to test him, quietly, relentlessly. "You are too loud, Potter," he'd murmur during potions. "Power is not in what you show, but in what you hide." Harry started to see it. How the smartest students spoke less, how ambition moved silently, and how fear could be turned into respect. Draco often watched him, puzzled. "You don't act like a Gryffindor," he said one night, while they studied under the green lamps of the common room. Harry looked up, his eyes reflecting the lake's dim light. "Maybe I never was one." Together, they began to form a quiet alliance. Draco's charm, Harry's instinct. They traded secrets, studied together, and learned that friendship in Slytherin was built not on trust, but on usefulness. Outside, the school whispered. "Potter has changed," they said. "He's colder, sharper," but inside, Harry felt something else. Not darkness, but understanding. For the first time, he saw why people feared Slytherin. Not because they were evil, but because they saw the world without illusions. Snape noticed the change too. One evening, after class, he stopped Harry at the door. "You are learning," he said softly. "Not what they teach in books, but what keeps you alive." Harry nodded, unsure whether it was praise or warning. As he left the dungeon, the torches flickered green, and for the first time, he felt he truly belonged. Yet, somewhere in the silence of the castle, another whisper followed him. A voice older than time itself. Greatness demands a price. Friendship in Slytherin was never simple. It was a dance. Graceful, calculated, where every smile hid a question, and every secret could become a blade. Draco Malfoy called Harry his friend. They walked together through the dungeons, laughed in class, shared whispered jokes during Snape's lectures. But even then, there was something fragile in it. A balance held by curiosity more than trust. One evening, by the black windows of the common room, Draco spoke softly. "You don't belong here, you know." Harry didn't look up. "Don't I?" "You're too quiet," Draco said, smirking. "Too careful. You think before you speak. That's not Gryffindor of you." Harry smiled faintly. Maybe that's why the hat changed its mind. Pansy Parkinson listened nearby, pretending not to. Blaise Zabini watched with interest, saying nothing. In Slytherin, words were never just words. They were moves on a chessboard, and every student learned to play. But Harry's moves were different. He didn't boast. He didn't seek attention. He listened. And in listening, he began to understand people in ways that frightened them. He learned that Draco's pride came from fear, that Pansy's cruelty came from insecurity, that Snape's anger was armor against pain. One night, while the others slept, Harry walked alone through the corridors, the torches flickering low. He passed portraits that whispered his name, some with admiration, some with warning. And he realized something then. In Slytherin, friendship was not about affection. It was about survival. Those who stood with you one day could turn against you the next. But those who didn't, the ones who stayed, silently, faithfully, they were worth more than gold or glory. And as the lake's reflection rippled across the ceiling, Harry whispered to himself, "Trust is not given here. It's earned and kept in the dark." In that moment, the boy who once feared the shadows began to feel at home within them. In the stillness of the dungeon, the only sound was the soft simmer of potions. Green, gold, and silver, glowing faintly in the dim light. Harry worked in silence. The boy who once stirred too fast, who once feared every breath in Snape's shadow, now moved with control, precise, calm, steady. Snape watched him from behind his desk, his black eyes unreadable. "You've improved," he said quietly. Harry looked up. "You taught me well." "No," Snape replied. "You learned well. There's a difference." Their conversations had changed. Once filled with tension and mistrust, now they carried something else. A quiet recognition. A respect neither dared to speak aloud. One afternoon, when class ended, Snape called him back. "Potter," he said, his tone sharp but slower than usual. "You are not like your father." Harry froze. "You don't wear your arrogance like armor," Snape continued. "You wear silence. And that is dangerous." "Dangerous?" Harry asked. "Yes," Snape said softly. "Because the quiet ones are the ones the dark notices first." There was a pause, long, heavy. The torches flickered, and for a moment, the world seemed smaller. "Tell me, Potter," Snape whispered. "If you had the power to change everything, would you use it?" Harry looked down at the table, his reflection rippling in the potion's surface. "I don't know," he said, "but I think I'd want to understand it first." Snape's gaze lingered on him, and for the first time, there was something almost human in his expression. "Understanding," he said slowly, "is the beginning of power and the end of innocence." As Harry left the classroom, the shadows seemed longer, the corridors quieter, and behind him, Snape sat alone at his desk, staring into the potion's reflection, as if seeing, once again, the boy he might have been, the boy who learned too much, too soon. It began with a whisper. At first, Harry thought it was the wind, but the words, the rhythm, felt alive. He heard it one night, walking back from potions. A faint voice, soft as breath against stone. "Come closer." He froze, staring down the long, empty corridor. The torches flickered. The air turned colder. "We are waiting." The voice seemed to move, sliding along the walls like a shadow, pulling him toward the dark corner near the serpent-carved archway. He followed, slowly, silently, until he stood before a wall older than the castle itself. His hand brushed the cold stone, and for a heartbeat, it felt alive beneath his touch. Then, suddenly, silence. No voice, no movement, just the slow echo of his breathing. The next day, he said nothing. But when Snape looked at him during class, Harry saw something strange in his eyes. As if he knew, weeks passed. The whispers returned, louder now, coming from behind mirrors, from under floors, from dreams that didn't feel like dreams. "You speak our tongue. You carry the mark. Open the way." One night, he woke up with a name on his lips, a name he didn't remember learning. Salazar. The next morning, he found a snake outside his bed, its eyes glowing faintly, watching him, not with threat, but with recognition. When he blinked, it was gone. That night, in the reflection of the black lake, he saw his own face flicker, for just a moment, into another's. Older, colder, proud, the whispers grew clearer now, like a language waking up inside his blood. And in the heart of Hogwarts, somewhere deep beneath the stones, something ancient stirred, as if it had finally found the air it had been waiting for. The whispers no longer hid. They called him now, clearly, directly. Heir, heir of our blood. The words came from the walls, from the fire, from the water beneath the lake. Harry tried to ignore them, but the more he resisted, the louder they became, until even silence felt alive. One night, he followed the voice again, down past the dungeons, through corridors the other students never saw. The walls were damp, covered in carved serpents older than memory. And then, a door. Not of wood or iron, but of living stone, shaped like a serpent, coiled around itself. When he stepped closer, the eyes of the carving flickered green. The voice whispered once more, "Speak, our tongue." Harry didn't think. The words came unbidden, sliding like silk from his mouth. Open. The stone moved. The serpent unwound, and the door opened into darkness. Inside, the air was warm and heavy. Columns rose high into the black, carved with ancient runes. The floor shimmered with green reflections, like water lit by an unseen fire. And at the center of the chamber stood a statue, vast, stern, alive in its stillness, Salazar Slytherin. His eyes, emerald and cold, seemed to look straight through him. "You carry my name," the voice echoed, not from the air, but from inside his mind. Not by birth, but by choice. The serpent does not choose the blood. It chooses the will. Harry's breath trembled. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I am what was left behind. The memory, the instinct, the hunger of a house that forgot its purpose." "And me?" Harry asked. "You are what it has become." The chamber shuddered faintly, as if the castle itself had heard. In that moment, Harry felt something awaken. Not dark, not evil, but powerful. A connection older than words, older than fear. When he left the chamber, the torches in the hallway burned brighter. The serpents carved on the walls seemed to bow. And as he climbed back toward the world above, he whispered to himself, "Maybe greatness doesn't come from who you are, but from what you dare to listen to." The voice no longer needed to call him. It lived inside him now, a quiet echo behind every thought, a warmth that wasn't his own. In class, he could feel it when he held his wand. The spell work flowed easier, faster, as if something unseen guided his hand. Snape noticed first. "Your control," he said one afternoon, watching Harry stir a potion that shouldn't have been possible for a second year, "is beyond your age." Harry looked up slowly. Maybe it's just practice. Snape's eyes narrowed. No, it's instinct. You're not learning magic anymore, Potter. You're remembering it. The words stayed with him. Remembering. That night, he opened an old book he had found hidden behind the potions shelves. Its cover dark, its pages warm to the touch. The writing was in a language he didn't know. Yet, as his eyes moved across the lines, the words began to make sense, like a forgotten melody returning after years of silence. Parseltongue, whispered the voice in his mind. He turned the page. Symbols of serpents, runes of power, spells that no one had spoken in centuries. And there, at the bottom of one page, a name written in faded green ink. Merope Gaunt. The name burned in his memory. He didn't know why, but something inside him did. He spent nights studying in secret, reading about the Gaunts, about the last pure descendants of Salazar Slytherin, about bloodlines lost to time. And then, one night, he found it. A family tree so tangled it barely made sense. But there, near the edge of the parchment, a name connected to another through a thin line of ink. Merope Gaunt, Tom Riddle. The ink below was smeared, but the letters were clear enough to read. Descendants unknown. The room felt colder. The candle flickered, as if the air itself had stopped breathing. For the first time, Harry whispered the thought that terrified him most. What if the blood of Slytherin isn't just calling to me? What if it's mine? The voice inside him didn't answer. It didn't need to. Its silence said everything. For days he couldn't sleep. The thought circled endlessly. A question that refused to die. What if it's my blood? The more he tried to ignore it, the stronger it pulsed inside him. A heat under his skin. A whisper behind his heartbeat. One night, the castle drew him again. The same path, the same ancient stairs leading down beneath the lake. The chamber waited, silent and breathing. The statue of Salazar loomed above the water, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Why me? Harry asked aloud. His voice echoed through the cavern like a prayer. Why am I hearing you? The answer came not in words, but in reflection. Across the still water, he saw his own face, shimmering in the faint green light. But as he looked closer, the reflection changed. The scar on his forehead glowed faintly. Not red, but emerald. Then the skin beneath his wrist began to burn. He pulled back his sleeve, and there, hidden all his life beneath the faintest trace of the old scar, a symbol began to form. A serpent, coiled into a circle, biting its own tail. The mark of Slytherin's bloodline. The voice returned, no longer a whisper, but a presence. The circle is unbroken. The air awakens. The light flared, filling the chamber with green fire. The stone walls trembled. The water rippled violently, and for a heartbeat, Harry felt himself disappear. He saw flashes, memories that weren't his. A man with black eyes and a silver ring. A woman crying beside a cradle. A voice whispering the name, Tom. When it ended, he was on his knees, gasping, his hands trembling with the mark glowing softly beneath the skin. He understood then. The scar on his forehead had never been the only mark left by Voldemort. There was another, older, deeper, hidden until the blood itself remembered. He was not Voldemort's enemy. He was his echo. As the glow faded, the statue's eyes dimmed again, and silence filled the chamber. But the reflection on the water didn't fade. It smiled back at him, not cruelly, not kindly, but knowingly. And somewhere deep inside, the serpent whispered one last truth. Every story of light begins with a shadow. The days after the mark appeared felt unreal. His reflection no longer looked like his own. The green light that once shimmered faintly in his scar now lived behind his eyes. Quiet, pulsing, alive. When he closed them, he could see memories that weren't his. Corridors filled with screams, books burning in blue fire. A boy standing in the same chamber, years ago, whispering to a diary that answered back. One night, it happened again. The voice. But this time, it didn't come from the walls. It came from within. You've seen it now, it said. Smooth, calm, familiar. You've felt it. You know who you are. Who are you? Harry whispered. I am what's left of him, the voice said softly. Of Tom. Of the boy who opened the chamber long before you ever walked these halls. You're Voldemort. A shadow of him, the voice replied. A memory, caught between time and blood. And now I am part of you. The torches flickered green. The reflection in the water shifted. And for a moment, Harry saw another version of himself staring back. Taller, older, his expression calm, sharp, almost gentle. You think you're different from me, the shadow murmured. But you're not. The world gave you a name, a destiny, and you obeyed it. I simply chose mine. You killed people to build a world that feared me, the voice said. You'll build one that worships you. That's the only difference. You're wrong, Harry said. I'm not you. The shadow smiled. Aren't you? You opened the chamber. You carry the mark. You speak our tongue. Tell me, Harry, when they look at you now, do they see a savior or a serpent? Harry stepped back, heart pounding, but the reflection didn't fade. You can't destroy me, it whispered. You can only understand me. And the moment you do, you'll stop being afraid. The chamber darkened again, the voice retreating into silence. But as Harry looked down at the still water, his reflection no longer frightened him. For the first time, he didn't see an enemy. He saw a question. One the world was never ready to answer. What if good and evil were never meant to be apart? The mark on his wrist pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat, and the reflection whispered, "You're learning, heir. Darkness is not your enemy. It's your inheritance." Hogwarts had changed. The whispers that once hid in corners now roamed the halls freely. Doors opened where no doors had been. Candles flickered green instead of gold. And everywhere Harry went, eyes followed. Dumbledore's smile was softer now, and colder. "You've grown powerful, Harry," he said one evening in his office. His blue eyes clouded with worry. "Too powerful for your age. Too quiet for your heart." Harry stood still, the faint glow of his mark hidden beneath his sleeve. "I only want to understand," he said. "Understanding," Dumbledore replied, "is the first step toward control. And control has a way of changing even the best of men." The silence between them was long and heavy. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, its reflection burning green through the windows. In the days that followed, rumors spread. "Harry Potter has turned," some whispered. "The boy who lived speaks to the walls now." In Slytherin, the students grew uneasy. Draco avoided him. Pansy stared but said nothing. Even Snape's lessons grew shorter, sharper. But Snape was not afraid. One night, he found Harry standing in the corridor before the Great Hall, his wand glowing faintly with green light. "You should stop," Snape said quietly, "before the castle stops listening to anyone but you." "It's too late," Harry answered, his eyes reflecting the torchlight. "Something's awake. It wants me to finish what was started." Snape stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "You think you can balance light and dark, but one will always consume the other. Dumbledore will not wait for that day." Harry looked at him, not with anger, but with the calm certainty of someone who had already chosen a path. "Then he'll have to stop me." That night, the castle trembled. Books flew from their shelves. Windows cracked under unseen pressure, and the paintings whispered in panic. The war within the walls had begun, not between armies, but between truth and fear. And as the storm raged outside, the serpent and the phoenix prepared to face each other. One born of fire, the other of shadow. Somewhere deep below, the chamber stirred again, listening, waiting to see which legacy would rise from the ashes. Hogwarts had changed. The whispers that once hid in corners now roamed the halls freely. Doors opened where no doors had been. Candles flickered green instead of gold. And everywhere Harry went, eyes followed. Dumbledore's smile was softer now, and colder. "You've grown powerful, Harry," he said one evening in his office. His blue eyes clouded with worry. "Too powerful for your age. Too quiet for your heart." Harry stood still, the faint glow of his mark hidden beneath his sleeve. "I only want to understand," he said. "Understanding," Dumbledore replied, "is the first step toward control. And control has a way of changing even the best of men." The The silence between them was long and heavy. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, its reflection burning green through the windows. In the days that followed, rumors spread. "Harry Potter has turned," some whispered. "The boy who lived speaks to the walls now." In Slytherin, the students grew uneasy. Draco avoided him. Pansy stared but said nothing. Even Snape's lessons grew shorter, sharper. But Snape was not afraid. One night, he found Harry standing in the corridor before the Great Hall, his wand glowing faintly with green light. "You should stop," Snape said quietly, "before the castle stops listening to anyone but you." "It's too late," Harry answered, his eyes reflecting the torchlight. "Something's awake. It wants me to finish what was started." Snape stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "You think you can balance light and dark, but one will always consume the other. Dumbledore will not wait for that day." Harry looked at him, not with anger, but with the calm certainty of someone who had already chosen a path. "Then he'll have to stop me." That night, the castle trembled. Books flew from their shelves. Windows cracked under unseen pressure, and the paintings whispered in panic. The war within the walls had begun, not between armies, but between truth and fear. And as the storm raged outside, the serpent and the phoenix prepared to face each other. One born of fire, the other of shadow. Somewhere deep below, the chamber stirred again, listening, waiting to see which legacy would rise from the ashes. Years passed. The war that had once shaken the castle faded into legend, and the boy who had lived became the man who ruled. They called it the Age of the Serpent, a time when Hogwarts no longer belonged to houses or bloodlines, but to knowledge, pure, dangerous, unfiltered. The banners were gone. No more red for courage. No more blue for wit. No gold for loyalty. No green for ambition. Only silver and black. The colors of reflection and shadow. Some feared him. Some worshipped him. But all agreed on one thing. The world had never been quieter or wiser. He rebuilt the castle stone by stone, sealed the chamber once more, and filled the halls with silence and study. He taught differently. Magic, he said, is not light or dark. It is a mirror. What you see in it depends on what you bring. Under his watch, the new generation of wizards learned truth first and spells second. They no longer feared serpents. They no longer worshipped heroes. They simply learned. Yet, even then, some still whispered his name at night, not in fear, but in awe. The heir who broke the circle, the serpent who carried the light, the boy who lived twice, and sometimes on stormy nights when the torches burned green instead of gold. The portraits swore they saw him, walking through the empty halls, his cloak brushing the stone floors. his eyes calm and silver, watching, listening, waiting, for he knew that history was never finished, that every legend, no matter how bright, was just the shadow of another waiting to begin. And so the world kept his story, not as a tale of good or evil, but as a reminder that sometimes the only way to save the light is to walk through the dark. The serpent sleeps now, but its eye never closes. Centuries passed. The names faded. The wars turned to whispers, and Hogwarts became legend. The world above forgot its stones and stories, but deep beneath the earth, the old walls still breathed, softly, patiently. One evening, a young witch wandered through the forest that had once bordered the ancient school. She found nothing but ruins, vines, broken arches, and a single silver serpent carved into stone. Curiosity guided her hand. She brushed the dust away, and the mark began to glow. The air trembled. The wind stilled. And then she heard it. A voice, quiet as a sigh, echoing through the ruins. Magic never dies. The girl stepped back, heart racing. "Who's there?" she whispered. The answer came not from the air, but from within her. "You carry it too." The serpent faded. The ruins fell silent. But when she looked down, a faint silver light shimmered beneath her skin. A mark like a circle, small and glowing. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. The wind carried a sound, not of words, but of a whisper too old to belong to men. He walks still. That night, she dreamed of a castle underwater, of torches that burned green, and a man with calm eyes who spoke without moving his lips. "The serpent sleeps," he said, "but you will wake it when the world forgets what truth means." When she awoke, she carried no memory of the dream, only the feeling of being watched, not with fear, but with recognition. And somewhere beneath the earth, far below the roots of the forest, an old chamber stirred again. A torch flickered to life. A ripple crossed the black water, and a single whisper filled the dark. The air returns. The story ends here, where light and shadow met and learned to breathe as one. They called him many names. The boy who lived, the heir of serpents, the keeper of balance. But time forgets names. It remembers only what they leave behind, in the ruins of old walls, in the shimmer of candlelight reflected in green glass. The air still hums with his memory, not of battle, not of power, but of peace. For the first time, the world understood that light is not the absence of darkness, and darkness is not the enemy of light. They are the same breath, drawn from the same soul. So if you ever walk alone beneath the rain and feel the wind whisper your name, listen carefully. You may hear him too. A voice older than the castle, softer than magic, saying only this: do not fear the serpent, for it guards the truth. And when the night falls quiet again, and the last candle fades, you will know that some stories never end. They only sleep, waiting for the next dreamer to wake them.